Hi, good morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. And today the focus of our presentation is going to be on driving connected product development with Multi-CAD Cloud PDM. But more specifically, we want to talk about 3 ways in which we can accomplish that while speeding up the product development process. So my name is Javier Chavez, and I'm a technical solutions specialist here at KETIV. Been with KETIV for a while. Today, joining me is Tony Nguyen. Over to you, Tony.
Yeah, thanks, Javier. As mentioned, my name is Tony Nguyen. I'm a solutions engineer here at Autodesk, and I specialize in everything PDM, PLM, and really enterprise data related. So I'll be able to help out with that. I'm very excited to be here with you all and be a guest on the KVA. Let's go ahead and jump in. So the 3 topics that Javier mentioned that we're going to get into today. First one, we're going to be going over how do we really supercharge your team's productivity by creating and then leveraging a central source of truth. And really, it's going to be no matter what CAD you use, right? Or even if you have multiple CAD tools in your environment. Second, we want to talk about how to just get faster and better at decision making, using a collaboration capability within the cloud. And then something that a lot of companies are still struggling with today as our third topic is, how do we reduce disruption by increasing supply chain agility using this cloud environment? But before we get started, we'd like to go ahead and get a poll out there for you. We'd like to understand what the different types of CAD systems you're all using, and so we can get a good feel for, who's using what and what their favorite tools are. And Javier, I know you have a lot of experience with quite a few of these. I do as well. I've used Creo, I've used NX, Inventor, of course. I should be a big Inventor fan, AutoCAD, and a SolidCAD or SolidWorks. I think KETIV is the only one I haven't used on this list.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. If there's a mix, I kind of wish we would have had, one more option for a mix. Maybe we put other in the, maybe you check off other and you put, multiple in there. But there's definitely customers that have a mix.
Oh yeah, tons. Usually if you have a 2D and a 3D, that's going to be a mix right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we see it quite a bit where, we have one operation being done in maybe Inventor and another operation being done in an X for whatever reason, using the strength of the tool. But, I've definitely seen that when I was in industry. I worked at ULA. We used both NX and Creo, a little bit of SolidWorks as well. All right, that's pretty good. I think we're seeing Inventor out there. We always want to see that, and a little bit of AutoCAD. I'm kind of surprised no SolidWorks, folks, but that's all right.
Same here. Yeah,
I'm good with that. Yep. All right, Inventor. Love to see it though. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So let's hit our first topic. Dive into how we can achieve this central source of truth and improve your team's productivity while doing that. I think, Javier, you have a couple stats to share with us before we dive deep into that.
Yeah, so we've always referenced a ton of research by different firms, and one of the later ones here is referring to design and engineering data. And so looking at this chart, I think you can see there's no surprise. A lot of time gets wasted just trying to find information. And in my experience, I find that to be true. I talked to a lot of you guys on tech support calls. I've visited you guys even on site. So even when I'm right in front of a customer and they want to show me something, it takes them 10, 15 minutes to find something. And they know exactly what they want to find, but it takes them 10, 15 minutes. So that happens when I'm gone as well, right? When we're not watching and you're trying to find something you worked on yesterday or 3 days ago or a year ago. And I think it just becomes a bit more, tough the longer you go that way. But finding the right model to work on and recreating it sometimes, or work, I guess, isolating it so that you can work on it has been a challenge. What's really bad though is a lot of times people don't find it, and so what do? They recreate the model they were looking for or the component they were looking for because they couldn't find it, and now we have duplicates. And unfortunately, you have a duplicate. Now you have to maintain 2 different files. Somebody knows where, you know, item number 1 is, somebody knows where item number 2 is, and you're maintaining 2 files that are almost identical. And the worst of the worst is basically working on outdated information, sending it out to the shop, and actually having it built incorrectly, right? That's the worst case. It's compounded by the fact that we have multiple CAD tools as well, and we have, you know, different systems to file them in. So you know, Tony will go into just a little bit more information on the next slide on how we tackle that.
Yeah, and you know, what's interesting here is we have time spent, but that last one, that 30% working on the wrong data, that the impact of that, even though it's the lowest on this scale, at 30% is a lot, but the impact of working on the wrong data is huge. I know I have scar tissue from my time in a design and project management seat. It costs you time. It can cost you employees actually too. So something to be very, very aware of. And that's something we want to eliminate, right? How we're going to eliminate that specifically when you have multiple CAD systems, or even if you're using a lot of different applications around the engineering environment, is creating that single source of truth, right? How we do that is with the tool that we're talking about today, which is specifically Upchain, part of the Fusion 360 Manage with Upchain capability that Autodesk and KETIV offer. What we're seeing here is the plugin page. What's great about this tool is it gives you instant access to PDM and integration of all of these solutions on the left-hand side that we're all familiar with, especially Inventor and AutoCAD. But the whole idea is that you just download one plugin for all of those CAD tools, and then you have it. It actually tells you what you can interface with right from the plugin, which is great. Additionally, you have the productivity plugin, which gives you access to your PDM system directly in your Office products like PowerPoint and Word and Excel, like we see here. So it's, you know, not just engineering. That's going to be a core focus here, so that we're not working on outdated data and we can find it quickly, but also these productivity tools that we know pretty well. We like to call this a CAD agnostic interface. And that's because in any CAD tool that you're going to see it in, let it be, let's see, we have Inventor here, what we're all familiar with, or SolidWorks, right? Or NX, even CATIA, you're going to notice a very similar interface. They're all going to be practically the same, right? They're going to live within your tool, what we call in canvas, to use our lingo, so that your teams never have to leave the tools that they know and love and are very, very productive in. That plugin gives you access to all of these. So if you do have a multi-CAD experience, so you have Inventor and you have AutoCAD, you're going to have that same plugin run within those 2 tools.
And Tony, if I can interject here, I just helped somebody the other day in a tool that I do not know at all, right? And so I helped some of them with the Upchain plugin and was, you know, pleasantly, you know, surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be so surprised, but to be able to see the exact same tools, right? The exact same right clicks, the exact same interface when it came to the Upchain part of it to get stuff in, registered as items, check it in, etc. So
Yep. Super intuitive when you're moving across different platforms. So what that allows us to do is start to bring CAD together. I know a lot of you are Inventor users, but let's say you're Inventor and AutoCAD, or your NX and AutoCAD, or maybe even all 3 of those together. What you want to do is start to be able to bring them into the single source of truth together. Something that really hasn't been capable within any other PDM before, unless you're, you know, paying a ton for very custom integrations, which then break down over time. What we mean by bringing this all together is that they can start to live within the same PDM, given the same feature sets, and we can actually start to blend them into the same bill of materials, which we'll see here in a little bit. But we also want to talk about how this is going to effectively allow you to break down those silos that we see build in your companies.
So yeah, that's true. And what we're going after here is trying to eliminate, you know, these silos, right? This isolated environment, which isolates people, really, not just the designs, but isolates people. And we're finding that companies, you know, they have to work already with extended teams in different locales. In a lot of cases, they're overseas, right? And that just exacerbates the issue with different time zones, et cetera. We should be able to work together with the CAD systems that we have and not have to worry about translating different file types. And so, product development is already challenging without trying to collaborate with different stakeholders who use different tools. It causes some confusion. So this is what we're trying to do, right? Is sort of eliminate some of this, and you'll see in the next slide. Tony, I'll talk about this here, but the fact that this is a cloud-based product means we're eliminating some of those silos. And we can work on the same data, no matter where you are, regardless if it's just on the other side of the country or you're, again, on a different continent. We're globalizing the data.
Yeah, and globalization means something very different nowadays. I like to point this out is we used to think globalization is you design it in California, you manufacture it in China. Now you might design it in California and Germany and then manufacture in China. Heck, you might design it in California in the one person in the office while somebody else is sitting on their couch or at their home office. And so it's, distributed networks with remote work. It's completely changed the game. And really this is going to allow you to adapt to that type of new normal, right?
Yeah, and even with contractors, a lot of people are using contractors, and yeah, those contractors are actually doing the same type of development work that we are, but they may or may not be in the same country. So we're actually doing exactly that. We're developing in different locations, not just handing off manufacturing to a different location. Yeah. But just the fact that we're on the cloud means we don't have to deal with synchronizing data across multiple servers, right? In some cases, you have to do that, or even better, right? We're not having to VPN over long distances into a single remote server, which adds all kinds of latency issues to share that data.
Yep.
Everybody's working on the same platform real time, and that data never sleeps. So it's available to you 24/7.
Yeah. And the collaboration is a huge aspect. It's one of the biggest reasons why we developed the tool in the first place. But the benefits of cloud go beyond the collaboration, right? So we see when we have your PDM in the cloud, when we're able to store your engineering, your documents, all of your artifacts really seamlessly, you get to leave behind all that overhead that's associated with all the on-premise solutions. We talk about the implementation costs of servers. Who's going to own that? Is it going to be you? Is it going to be your IT contractor? Just the logistics behind that can get a little bit muddy. And then the database licenses, in addition to your software, can be not only add up, but be hard to manage. You're going to have IT staff either in your own company or where your servers live, if you're going to own those servers remotely. And then, of course, hardware. Hardware is going to go obsolete. You're going to have maintenance on top of that. There's quite a bit that starts to add up over time. One thing that I also like to point out as far as cloud versus on-prem, which is somewhat of a myth, is the security factor, right? When you put your designs on the cloud, you're entrusting the same AWS servers that huge companies like Netflix, all of our favorite streaming companies use, right? A lot of our bank information is now in the cloud. So you can think of it that way. It can actually be a lot more secure, especially if you were ever to find yourself the victim of a ransomware attack, which was successful on the hacker side. Being able to back up your data remotely at all within the cost of your subscription, and then be able to retrieve that and not be held hostage is a huge portion of what comes along with cloud that is in addition to that collaboration piece that we talk about. Now, when we speak about one central source of truth, how do we actually get it there? What's the mechanism, right? So we start with CAD. That's what a lot of us understand is building our bill of materials in the CAD, right? Or the mechanical CAD BOM, if you will, CBOM. And of course, we've hit it a lot. You can use any of these tools. But the second you bring those tools, and they're what we consider automated itemization, which means it just creates a record and attaches the CAD to it without any other, clicks or anything like that. What that's going to do is allow you to put that on a bill of materials, which then allows you to do a lot of process management around it as well. So change management, revision, versioning, all those types of things that your company currently does, and maybe you do via spreadsheet or even email or things like that. Now we can use it all single BOM for one design. Doesn't matter what design tool it came out of. And then of course that goes downstream from there. And anybody seeing it downstream or even in your PLM tool and Upchain, they're not going to know what tool it came from. And that's the perfect thing, right? If you're not a designer, you don't have to worry about the CAD system you use. We don't want to, have to worry about that CAD system that the designers are using. You want to be able to see the product data within one unified bill of materials. And that's really what we're trying to do here. So to wrap this one up, the whole imagine if, right? Think about what we do today, the before. People who aren't in a CAD tool maybe can't get to that. Maybe if you're an NX user, but you have an AutoCAD user who needs your modeling or vice versa, and you don't have those programs now, you can't open them up. Maybe you have to save those in different databases, or they're in different folder structures because you're in a different tool. And the biggest thing, like we've talked about, is anything that's out of date. Whenever you have multiple CAD systems, there's much more likelihood of that, because you have to translate documents, you have to shift them around. We've all shared those, maybe consumed a drawing from a 2D application into a 3D application, where that handoff and that handshake happens, even in the design team, can be a little bit faulty. And then we think about downstream and how they're going to consume them, in procurement, in manufacturing, even in services. How does that work? So really what we're trying to get you to is that single source of truth. I like this, the right data to the right people at the right time. That's really where we're trying to go.
So the next thing we'll talk about here is just making better decisions, how we enable that, especially in a cross-functional environment, right? So we'll talk about that. And just before we do, let's go and take another poll, right? So you should see that launch, and you should have some choices to make here regarding any downstream challenges that you guys might have. So take a look at the options, right? We're all trying to do more with less, but if you have, poorly defined or misunderstood, requirements, that's a problem with communication, right? If there is disruption within the supply chain, again, that requires communication. People need to let you know that there are part shortages, long lead times, et cetera. So click accordingly. Take a look there at all the choices. And I mentioned this, to somebody else, but if you click nothing down at the bottom, just let us know. We'd love to, hear from you and find out if you have any openings, because I guarantee you that's probably not the case. But if nothing is wrong and everything's flawless, we'd love to hear from you guys as well.
Right, exactly. I think what we'll probably run into most is people wanting to click more than one of these. We're only giving them the opportunity to click a single one, make it the most impactful, right? Whatever is hitting you the biggest. But if you have a couple of these that are ranking 1 and 2, put it in the chat. Let us know. We'd love to know.
Yep.
All right. What do we say? Oh, supply chain, huge.
Supply chain. Yeah.
Requirements. Yeah. A little bit of everything, right? Yeah, quite a bit. Whatever the other is, I'd love to see that. And then, hey, we got 2 people said that their process is flawless. It's like we got some applications to put out, Javier. All right. Yeah. Thank you for your input.
Yeah. So a close second at 20% was, the lack of communication, during the product development process. So here's some really interesting, research data points, right? Take a look at how much time is wasted by engineers looking for data, right? That's equivalent to 2 working days a week, and that basically is adds up to 2 months a year. That's a ton of time, right? Next to that, you see the number of systems that engineers have to deal with, and every time you have to switch gears and touch another system, whether it's ERP, CRM systems. I don't think we'll ever get that down to 1 or anything like that, but to minimize that, right, can minimize that switch, that impact when you switch tools. And I can think of times where, yes, I'm looking at part number 1, 2, 3, and my CAD system shows a description one way, and then the ERP system shows it a different way, right? So again, there's some issues there with the communication with a description. But what really starts to jump out at me are the number of brand new products that we introduce, right, that are over budget, right? 83% of those, and nearly 80% of those are behind schedule. But that's got to tie into our profitability of introducing those new products in the first place, right? We thought we were going to make X, and we're making less because it's late. And a lot of times that's because of communication with all the other enterprise resources that go into putting out a new product, right? So we believe, multi-CAD cloud-based PDM can help with that, right? And so what we see here is basically a typical product development phases, going from cradle to grave, left to right, right? And I'm guilty of this, of doing what we're going to talk about next. But if you go from left to right, you can see that if you make changes earlier in the process, things are going to be better, right? But what typically happens, right, when a product is getting developed, we as engineers, right, we like to basically do our part and eventually just hand it over to the next part or to the next person, right? So in the next slide, what you'll see is reality. I think what you'll see here is we throw it over the wall, right? And in throwing it over the wall, that's when we finally involve some of the rest of the team. So again, I'm guilty of this. We throw it over the wall. We involve the rest of the team way too late in the process. And as a result, when purchasing is trying to source components, et cetera, and maybe has a change for you as a result of sourcing, now you got to go back to product development and make a change to the part just because we can't source it. Part numbers, maybe it's a completely different component, you have to change your design. So these changes add up at the end. That's a much higher cost that happens late in the game here. So problems that we could have identified and fixed earlier, uncovered later, right? So in the next slide here, you'll see that providing PD, some of these changes earlier, right, reduces the cost of any changes that are likely from any one of these other stakeholders, right? Quality, service, you see some of those, and it makes it easier as well, to look at this data inside of a tool and find existing components. So there's techniques that we use just to classify while you're searching for components that make it easy to find and reuse data, right? And leverage existing parts instead of not being able to find them and creating a new component. So early cross-functional collaboration with the rest of your team allows for different functions to catch potential problems way early in the process. And when changes are fast, it makes it also faster to execute those changes. And the result, right, is just lower lifetime costs and fewer delays. Right? So people like Tony and myself who know CAD tools and know the models really well, a lot of times you can give us these tools and we can navigate through them, et cetera. But what about the rest of the enterprise, right? So Upchain gives us a way to look at this data and see it without any CAD licenses, right? So when procurement needs to just take a look at a drawing, when somebody on the shop maybe needs to take a look at the model, et cetera. The interesting thing is when you look at the screen capture here, you can't tell whether this came from CATIA, whether it came from Creo, et cetera. We're looking at it the same way. You have ways to section this off, to take a look at some of the details like exploded views, et cetera. And you can have people participate within the design and do things like mark this up, right? So everybody sees the same data. There's no translation. It's just as soon as you put it up, as soon as we post up our CAD models, boom, we can see them, right? And we can start looking at them this way. And so when we take a look at the next slide, right? As an example, during a review cycle, multiple people can add their comments and feedback to one file, to one thing, right? As opposed to sending something via email and getting 10 different, markups for the same file, some of them which are redundant, right? You can't see that redundancy. Somebody's already marked up that the hole's in the wrong place. A second person made the same markup to their markup. So anybody in the same organization can see my feedback. I can see their feedback, and it's just again a centralized place, not just for your CAD data, but for this type of interaction as well, right? And so you'll see also that we can compare changes from revision to revision, or even just version to version. So in the larger portion of the screen, we're looking at a BOM here that highlights in green the things that have changed or have been added, right? So anything in green has been added to the bill of material, new things, right? The red has been deleted or removed. You could see the white there, no change at all. And the yellow shows, hey, we still are calling out maybe the same thing, but there's some changes, maybe changes in quantity, maybe a change in description, but it's, we're still calling out the same thing, but something about that has changed that's a little bit less obvious, right? Just a quantity or something like that. And likewise, if you look at the bottom right corner, we also create a visualization of change. So now you're looking at the model and you can see that, again, the red thing is the thing that's gone. The green is what's been added, and what's opaque there, or just kind of de-emphasized, are the things that didn't change. So we can do this visually, or we could do it in a bill of material manner as well. So so just imagine, in a way where you don't have to use, translation services. You don't have to spend the non-value added time creating translations and uploading them. It happens here within a singular platform, right? Imagine, creating or, working with getting feedback from people without having to create, screen captures or documentation, or sending these emails going back and forth and capturing people's reaction to some of these documents or their feedback from those documents. You can do this right now live in a cloud environment. And again, no more worrying about out of sync data or out of date information. We're always going to the one source of truth, the one cloud platform where we're putting it all. So you should be getting the latest, greatest data. And this gives you, again, a way to keep from duplicating data. There's just one source of that digital truth. Okay, so I'll go ahead and hand it over to Tony to tackle this last point here.
Yeah, thanks, Javier. One note on the ability to collaborate with people who don't have CAD installed. One, that's awesome, because it brings you out of the engineering realm, right? It gets engineering feedback into the engineering, outside of the engineering realm really easily, but also it can reduce the number of licenses you pay for things, right? I mean, being from Autodesk, I always want you to buy the licenses you need, but I don't want you to burden yourself with that cost because somebody just needs to see the data in, in whatever format you have it in. We want you to be able to consume it in these easy to use viewers. So awesome capability there. All right, the last point we want to talk about is really supercharging the capability to collaborate with your supply chain. I like to call it actually the value chain, because it could be suppliers, it could be vendors, it could be anybody third party. But of course, before we do that, let's take one final poll, because we like to know how many folks out there are, how many vendors, distributors, consultants, contract manufacturers, suppliers, anybody that you have to interface with outside of your company that has a huge impact to what you do, as far as new product development, getting projects out the door, anything like that, getting the right parts in. any of those third-party folks, could be even customers that you need feedback from. Let us know how many people within, how many external stakeholders do you usually deal with on a regular basis? Mine, every company I've had, it was always 100 plus. I've worked in some fairly large, Ball Aerospace, United Launch Alliance, some pretty big manufacturing firms in which we sourced a ton of components. So I was always in the 100 plus. That doesn't always mean it's much more difficult. Sometimes you have entire teams that can take care of it at that point. Sometimes when you're in that 50 to 100, 26 to 50 range, that's when it gets complicated, because you can't have like a procurement specialist, or maybe you just have one or two people in that role, and it's just really, really difficult. So let's see what we got. Yeah, 11 to 25, pretty average. That's quite a bit. We have a couple folks that are dealing with a lot more vendors and distributors. It can really impact how your day-to-day goes, as far as, are you sending over email? Do you have a portal? Are you sharing the engineering that could now be outdated the second you link it to an email? Lot there. So
and really interesting, Tony. And, even when you do have a team that, handles procurement, right, and you have multiple people, that was my experience when we had, more than 100, vendors, et cetera, to collaborate with. Having them do this, communicate with vendors consistently the same way. They all had their same way, in my experience. And so they communicated differently, as opposed to some standardized way where we could always see, the status of things.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Being able to get information out in one way, being able to get information back in and interpret it in the same way, huge time saver. Lots of opportunity for error if you're not using a standardized system. That's a really good point. Okay, so let's talk about suppliers, vendors, third-party partners, right? So again, to the survey that we've run, our friends at Tech Clarity ran, they did an entire manufacturing industry-wide survey. They came up with roughly one half, a little bit more of those who were surveyed, said that they're going to, either now or in the very near future, increase globalization, which means adding additional suppliers, contractors, contract design firms, anybody who's going to impact them externally. As well as over half the people surveyed also said they're going to increase customization, and that demand is anticipated to increase as well from the customer side, which also means adding more third-party partners into your ecosystem. Now, when I say suppliers or vendors, I also mean, right, obviously those, but anybody who's going to have that feedback loop into your ecosystem, have that impact, such as customers. That's going to be a huge deal, especially if you're maybe an engineer to order, a configure to order type of company, or you're project based, or you have large quantities going out. You may have things like return merchandise authorizations, quality type things that you'll have feedback coming back from your customers. Of course, outsource engineering. Javier mentioned it earlier. We're starting to use contractors a lot more often. That's coming back into vogue. How are you going to be able to collaborate with them? And then, of course, our strategic partners, who we're going to have to walk in lockstep with to make sure that we're meeting the demand of our customers and they're meeting our demand as their customers. So how do we go about doing that? Well, what we do is we provide that single source of truth and then allow it to have a window into for everybody else to look through, right? So we have the supplier management portal within Upchain, in which you can now take the bill of materials with all of your CAD artifacts, all of your drawings, everything like that. And we can actually open that window and show our suppliers, our customers, our vendors, anybody who needs to have that feedback into our system can now go in and grab that information, and they can actually go through a workflow with us, right? So not only are we just packaging everything up and sending it to them, we are doing that, but we're also providing them a viewing window so they can go in and walk through an entire workflow for us, which is very, very helpful. So knowing that you have a supplier portal now through Upchain, in which everybody can work on the same workflow, on the same data, using the same viewers, those types of things. Imagine, right? No more emails to either request that information because suppliers cannot provide it to you. No more sending secured information through an email where it could immediately be out of date. And then, of course, we can reduce the meetings and calls. We want to have some of the non-verbal collaboration that comes along with this. If we send it through the supplier portal, now they get the right engineering. They can see it the exact same way we do. They don't have to have, even though they'll get them automatically, they don't have to have the step files. They don't have to have IGES files, those types of things. They can actually use the viewer, so they don't have to interpret it in whatever system they're using. So now you have a standardized template for RFQs. Like Javier mentioned, just the efficiency you're going to gain from that is huge. And then you're going to be able to send all that information securely, right? And it's going to be the right information. And then, of course, with that combined workflow within that supplier portal, now you can actually have that feedback loop within a standard application. So quite a bit there, just from the supplier side, or really anybody third party. So we covered a lot in a little bit of time. I'm looking over, it was probably about 30 minutes or so, 35 minutes, a lot of information. What did we talk about? Right? We want to just improve your productivity overall just by having one place for everybody to go and look for your data. Take it in through any CAD tool you want. Now it's in Upchain. Now anybody can have access to it. They can visualize it. They can work with the bill of materials. They can export all of this if you need to. And then, of course, you can take some of those PLM functionalities like change and quality and those types of things and wrap that in, because now you're in that single source of truth. Of course, we're enabling faster and better decision making because we're bringing everybody into the fold sooner. That was a big deal where, I've worked before. We saw the cost if you start to push it out into production and manufacturing gets exponential. We want to bring all those stakeholders, down into the development stage, so it's a lot less expensive and our products get out to market faster. And then, of course, collaborating with everybody, not only internally but externally, that is going to have an impact on our business. We want to be able to do that, and of course, with supplier portal and being able to package all of your artifacts and have that uniform way of translating information and gathering information. That's going to be able to allow you to have that much more seamless collaboration externally as well. So what we covered, and Javier, I think a lot of people might be interested in seeing the tool in action now.
Yeah, and I think we would definitely want to hear back from you guys. So here's that QR code again. If some of you guys want to talk more specifically about your situation, to make sure again that a cloud-based PDM is right for you, we can certainly help you guys get to an answer there and determine that. So take a look here. Take a quick capture of the QR code, or simply reach out to us, and we can provide a quick demo and a conversation regarding PDM in general, right, and find out what's right for you. So with that said, we'll go on a Q&A here in just a moment. We're going to take a look and see if there's some questions being asked through the chat. So I'm not sure if anybody's taking a look at the chat now. I'm kind of scanning through it.
Yep. Thanks so much, guys. We had a couple come through the private chat. First of all, thanks, Tony and Javier. Great presentation today. Just one of the questions that came through, Upchain and Autodesk Vault, two data management programs. What's the difference between Upchain and Vault?
Sure. We can both, kind of tackle that, right? One, Upchain is natively in the cloud, right? And Vault is on-premise. You need a server. You need to maintain that server. You need to provide security for this. So there's some overhead there, right? And you can host it up on the cloud. We do that, and we've seen a demand for customers wanting to relieve some of that overhead associated with maintaining a server. But in reality, we're maintaining a server for you, right? And I believe we do the best job at it out there in terms of maintaining it for you. However, it's still, a cost. And in a lot of cases, right, Vault is best for an almost 100% Autodesk environment where you have AutoCAD for 2D, you have Inventor for 3D, etc. Right? When you have multiple stakeholders that are using different tools, suddenly multi-CAD is, that capability, and Vault has some of that too, is very important, right? And so it's definitely going to come down to a conversation about how comfortable you feel with a cloud environment and the type of tools you already have available to you guys, right? If you're a multi-cloud environment. So Tony, I'm not sure if you can add anything else to that. I know the PLM component, there is no PLM in Vault really, right?
Yeah, that's another good point. We do have some, I wouldn't call it rudimentary. We have some less complex change management, right, in Vault that I think a lot of people know about, where Upchain has a more configurable interface for that. That's really all I would add into that. I think you covered it pretty well.
Yeah.
Great. One more question in regard to Upchain as well. As far as like new versions or upgrades, is there a cost associated with any of those, or is that just part of it?
Yeah, no cost to updates. We go on really like an agile release process internally as we're developing. We're only going to push updates to what we call our tenant. We do it regularly. We do it roughly once a quarter, maybe every now and then we'll throw a couple extra features in there, and it's always going to be an enhancement. We're never going to take functionality away. But to the question, no, there's no additional cost to that. Really, the only thing that anybody would have to ever update on their side, we'll update the CAD plugin occasionally and add a lot of feature to that, and that's usually quarterly time frame. So you might need to update that, but again, no cost.
Yeah, and then that's a huge part of even the need for the CAD updates or plugin updates is the fact that the CAD tools are changing, right? You're going to be changing to another release. But other than that, think of it as, for those of you guys that are used to Fusion 360 designing there, right? You don't update that tool. It just updates, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good point.
Awesome. We had one more. What does implementation look like?
Sure. Javier, you're the implementation expert. Do you want to go ahead and take that?
Yep. So it varies a little bit, right? Depending on how complex your environment is, how many different teams you want to involve, because not everybody needs to involve suppliers and procurement, et cetera. But when I first started looking at this tool, approximately a little over a year ago, and going through some of the training process, I was very pleasantly surprised at the fact that you can go through Upchain Academy, which is an interactive learning path to learn almost anything and everything you need to know about Upchain, that you could accomplish almost everything you need by going through that, taking notes and rewinding some of those videos, etc., to get yourself up and running. Now, not everybody has time to do that. People want sometimes a consultant like ourselves to go in there and also give advice on best practices. With that said, you can do it yourself, right? I think you'll need some help, some guidance on best practices if you've never implemented a PLM and you're not sure what to implement as practices. That's where we can really come in and help. But as far as implementation goes, it varies a little bit. That's one of the things we'd love to talk to you guys about. How many people you want to include, how many processes do you have, how complex are those processes? Very similar questions that we would ask for any PDM system.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I'd add to that is, well, a couple of things. One, the implementation, I think all very true. You have to scope out what the use cases are and kind of your ideal end state. But on top of that, since it's cloud, your time to value on it, the time it takes you to implement is much lower, right? Because you don't have to turn on servers, you don't have to go through portals, you don't have to stand up VPN, you don't have to do any of that. In fact, if you were to subscribe to a license today, right, you're going to have that available to you as soon as we can just really clone the base tenant to you, and we can add you as an admin, and then of course you can add all the rest of your subscribers to it. That's really how simple it is. So if you have pretty simple use cases, generally out of the box use cases as we would call them, yeah, as Javier mentioned, go through Upchain Academy, and if you feel like you need a little bit more help or you want somebody else to build out those for you, contact KETIV, and Javier and his team will be able to do that. The second thing I'd like to mention is kind of aligned with implementation is onboarding, right? So let's say you go into Upchain, you've built out your entire environment, you're humming along, you're in production. What happens when you bring in new engineers, new people to procurement, new people to manufacturing? They'll also have Upchain Academy available to them to be able to onboard very quickly. And that's another huge benefit to having a tool that is simple, intuitive, modern, with that self-guided, module-based learning path for you, because you can literally just sit them down in front of their laptop and they can learn and be productive in a much faster way.
Yep,
Awesome.
I agree.
Go ahead.
I just said I agree.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions we had. Thanks so much to Tony and Javier. You guys did a great job of introducing this to us today. And this will be available on KETIV.com as a recording, as well as the KETIV YouTube page. So feel free to check it out there if you need to review it. But otherwise, thanks so much, guys, for your time today. And we look forward to seeing everyone next Thursday for the next KVA.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.